Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now, in this class, Krishna is going to explain the characteristics of a saintly sage and talk about the question of study of the Vedas. Now, we're in this very important chapter, chapter 11, where he's giving Uddhava the basics of spiritual knowledge. Fascinating, important information for us to establish our spiritual lives. And if you want to watch the previous classes, and we already have nearly 40 classes in this course, then make sure you become a member of the channel. And the description of how to do that is here in the description of the video. An explanation of how to become a member of the channel. And as a member of the channel, you can then access the entire Uddhava-gita course at your convenience and watch all the classes whenever you want. So here we are in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, in verse 15. So Krishna says to Uddhava, sometimes, for no apparent reason, one's body is attacked by cruel people or violent animals. At other times and in other places, one will suddenly be offered great respect or worship. One who becomes neither angry when attacked, nor satisfied when worshipped, is actually intelligent. So here in this verse, Krishna is back to one of the most important topics taught by Krishna, equanimity. And the importance of just taking this step back and not getting too involved with the world. This okay, whatever, up and down, cold, hot, honor, dishonor. You know, it's happening somewhere else. It's not really me, so I'm not going to get overly excited about it. I'm not going to react intensely to the things of this world because they are seasonal. They are like this. They happen one way and then the other way. Like Krishna says in Bhagavad-gita to Arjuna, look, you know, there's like the seasons. It's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot. It's just the way the world is. Honor, dishonor, here you're attacked or here you're worshipped. I mean, you know, that's just the way it is. And so the wise person, the mark of the yogi is equanimity. If you had to choose one quality to analyze, it would be equanimity. If you just had to pick one, that's it, equanimity. Famously in the Bhagavad-gita, there's a chapter that's called, you know, the Bhakti Yoga chapter, chapter 12. Beautiful chapter, very short chapter, only 20 verses. But in that chapter, which is exclusively on the topic of Bhakti Yoga, I mean, the whole Bhagavad-gita is encouraging Bhakti, devotion. So you'd think that a chapter in Bhakti Yoga is going to be all about all the devotion and this behavior, and he's worshiping, he's got an element. No. The main focus in that whole chapter is equanimity. And Krishna says over and over again that person is very dear to me. So this, and again, it's like a step back. That's what we've been talking about in this chapter, right? This understanding that you're not the doer. It's all about taking a step back. That's what, you know, transcendence means. The path of transcendence is like you're no longer the actor. You're now the witness, the observer. You take a little step back. You're still acting, you're still involved, but now, you know, there's some space between you. It's not, you're not feeling everything, you know, not thin-skinned, as it were, you know, you're a little step back. And then life becomes really nice because the actual bliss of life is you'll discover the more you get into spiritual life, the more you can take this step back, the bliss of life is already within you. We had this idea that no, the pleasures are here. You know, I have to like do the stuff here. It's on the surface of reality. No, the actual bliss is in here. So when you take this step back, you remove the drama and you keep the bliss. Because the bliss was with you the whole time. It's with you. So you, the observer, you're the source of bliss. And of course, God, Ram, the source of infinite bliss. So it is this that's pleasurable. And then the contact with reality is just like a way of agitating that characteristic. So then we feel, kinds of material pleasure, material suffering. But that's a distorted application of this bliss energy we have. So when you take a step back, people think, oh, then it's going to get really bad. It's going to get dull. It's going to be like numb. You're going to be all numb. No, it's the other way around, because it's matter that's numbing the soul. Your contact with matter is decreasing your pleasure, your bliss. It's not the other. It's not that you need this interaction with matter to be joyful. No, you're joyful, and this interaction with matter is bringing you down. It's getting that beautiful, pure energy of bliss you have, and it's wasting it. It's distorting it. It's coming back to you in a weird way. So then, and then you have these highs and lows, and angry and happy and cold and hot and honor, dishonor. So then you have these fluctuations of duality. So this step back situates you in your real position. That's why Krishna says that person is actually intelligent. Purport. If one does not become angry when attacked for no apparent reason, and if one does not become enlivened when glorified or worshipped, then one has passed the test of self-realization and is considered fixed in spiritual intelligence. Uddhava asked Lord Krishna, Kairva gayeta lakshane, by what symptoms can a self-realized person be recognized? Just as Lord Krishna enlightened Arjuna, he now explains the same subject matter to Uddhava. In this verse, the Lord describes symptoms by which it is very easy to recognize a saintly person. For a normal person becomes furious when criticized or attacked, and overwhelmed with joy when glorified by others. There is a similar statement by Yajnavalkya to the effect that one who is actually intelligent does not become angry, though pricked with thorns, and does not become satisfied at heart merely by being worshipped with auspicious paraphernalia, such as sandalwood. Okay, verse 16. A saintly sage sees with equal vision equanimity, and therefore is not affected by that which is materially good or bad. Indeed, although he observes others performing good and bad work and speaking properly and improperly, the sage does not praise or criticize anyone. So now this sage is really, this sage is not taking responsibility for the others. So we may criticize people's behavior and what they say or not if we think that by doing so we're helping teach others. But for our own self, for the sake that, why? I have nothing to do with this. So many times that we live in such polarized times, and people say some really crazy things these days, right? You know what I'm talking about. You might think, that what I think is crazy, you think is right, and what I think is right, you think is crazy. But anyway, very polarized times. So lots of people saying crazy things and doing crazy things. But you don't waste time criticizing and explaining that every time you see something wrong. Oh no, you just and I tell my students, just step back, don't worry about it, because you're not going to even change the person. You think, no, I have to tell them because I have to set them straight. I have to set her straight. You're not going to set anyone straight because they don't care. People will just think whatever they feel like they think. They'll conclude whatever they previously had already concluded. So, we don't really go changing the world. So we do. This is great. A suggestion for modern day life where there's so many crazy ideas. Just don't, you don't have to praise or criticize anyone. You don't have to praise them because they're saying the things you know to be true, and they're saying, or criticize them because they're saying crazy stuff. just take a step back, and unless it's your duty, unless like, no, I'm a teacher, I'm a guru, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to teach my children, okay. But unless you're like in such a role, the best thing we do is just to not comment. And if people were to follow this instruction, there would be a lot less polarization, because people get agitated. When somebody says that you're wrong, the tendency is that you'll just you'll double down on your position, even though it might be wrong. You know, it just makes you more combative. If people attack you, they're like, no, then I'm really going to hold on to this idea. But the less you talk about it, then people just kind of forget about it. So it actually would help reduce the polarization in the world if you just follow this instruction of not criticizing, not praising people just because you think what they're saying, what they're doing is right or wrong. Unless, again, it really is your job and people are counting on you to do that, or they're coming to you and asking for guidance, for that issue. Verse 17. For the purpose of maintaining his or her body, a liberated sage should not act, speak, or contemplate in terms of material good or bad. Rather, he or she should be detached in all material circumstances, and taking pleasure in self-realization, he should wander about engaged in this liberated lifestyle, appearing like a retarded person to outsiders. So here, radical instruction from Krishna, which you will see, like we saw examples of this just recently when we were reading the story of the great sage Dattatreya, the great guru Dattatreya. And we see others, even avatars like Rishabhadeva, following this instruction to the letter, where they go off in the world and just, and of course Bharata, King Bharata, when he came back as Jada Bharata, just walk around, and these people would actually walk around. They actually just go off. This is a practice. It's Jada Yoga. It's called Jada Yoga. Jada means crazy, so it's crazy yoga. So in crazy yoga, in Jada Yoga, foolish yoga, you go off and you just have no interaction with the world. I'm not saying you should do that. I don't do that. You go off and you just wander about, and people would beat them up, they would let them beat them up, people would urinate, they had actually specified this, people would urinate on them, they would let them urinate on them. Rishabhadevi is an avatar, and people would, it says that people would lock him up in cages, and he would let them lock them up in cages, so he'd be locked up, urinated upon, spat, beaten up, whatever, and you just, no problem. It's like, don't try this at home. So they would do these things. They would just walk around and not talk and not respond to people and ignore everybody else. And just people think, oh, he's crazy. He's deaf, dumb, and crazy. And then treat him like an animal. He's like, whatever. So this was of course, we don't have to go that far. But we can take this, just take it down a notch or two and go off in the world and not be bothered when you do meet, the jerk, and people do offend you and attack you. Not be overjoyed when people praise you, glorify. So you can definitely do. We should do that. Just go around, and your actions won't be in terms of material good or bad. Your actions will be in terms of dharma. It's just dharma. It's not about, is it going to be a nice situation? Is it going to be a bad situation? Is it going to be pleasant? Is it going to be unpleasant? No, that's duality. Right? In yoga, we're fixed on the dharma. So I'll perform my dharma. I'll do what has to be done, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, whether I want to do it or not, whether it's convenient or inconvenient, expensive or not, whether it's profitable or it's going to give you a lot. It doesn't matter. If it's my dharma, I'm going to do it. So that's how we navigate with this detachment focused on our interior existence, our mind, our experiences, our contact, our devotion, without being influenced by material nature. Purport. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this verse describes a type of discipline recommended for the jnana yogis, who by intelligence try to understand that they're not their material bodies. One who is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, however, accepts and rejects material things in terms of their usefulness in their loving service to Lord Krishna. One who is trying to preach Krishna consciousness should be seen as very intelligent and not jadavat, or stunted as described here. Although a devotee of the Lord does not act, speak, or contemplate for his personal sense gratification, he remains very busy working, speaking, and meditating in the devotional service of the Lord. So again, this is Krishna is describing here a special kind of radical practice, which we do find in the Bhagavatam, but generally, certainly not something recommended for the general populace. But, for us here, it really is focused on Dharma, which is the way we serve Krishna. So we want to do the best Dharma so we can offer this beautiful Dharma to Krishna. So you do the best of you so you can offer your acts to Krishna. And that's how you become detached and focused in equanimity. The devotees make elaborate plans to engage all the fallen souls in Lord Krishna's service so they can be purified and go back home, back to Godhead. Merely rejecting material things is not perfect consciousness. One must see everything as a property of the Lord and meant for the Lord's pleasure. One busily engaged in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement has no time to make material distinctions and thus automatically comes to the liberated platform. Verse 18. Now about the Vedas. Now Krishna is going to focus on study of the Vedas, which is a huge thing, right? It's a very important thing, classic thing, been going on for thousands of years. So what about the study of the Vedas? There's so many ways you can study, and we see so many different groups and lineages studying the Vedas. So he's going to talk about this important topic now. If through meticulous study one becomes expert in reading Vedic literature, but makes no endeavor to fix one's mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one's endeavor is certainly like that of a man who works very hard to take care of a cow who gives no milk. In other words, the fruit of one's laborious study of Vedic knowledge will simply be the labor itself. There will be no other tangible result. So Krishna, very hard message. This is actually a very deep, important message, especially within the context of Vedic religion and Vedic culture. Krishna saying, look, if you study the Vedas, but you don't come to the point of bhakti, of worshiping me, it's completely useless. It's just a waste of time. You say, oh, but I'll get some nice karma and some good. It doesn't matter. That's useless as well. A waste of time. It's funny because he gives this example of working hard to maintain a cow that gives no milk. It's not exactly something that we would use today as an example, but you get the point. You're just working, you get nothing for it. Get nothing for it. So, and he's going to go on about this a little more. Of course, the point is, and we see this, and you actually see this today, you see this all the time. It's funny how this is true always. This is a temporal knowledge, because you do see people who know so much. Sometimes academics who know the Vedas so well, or other times it's like traditional people who are studying, the Vedas, tradition. But, you have people who memorize memorize thousands of shlokas from the Rig Veda or something, but then they don't get it, they're not in bhakti, they're not in devotion. You can see that all the time. It's happening right now. People study and they don't understand, they don't get to the point. It's like, oh man, you're there, you're carrying, Prabhupada would say it's like carrying like a donkey, like an ass that carries all this baggage, but it's no good for the ass, for the donkey, It's just like you have all this baggage of knowledge and you don't didn't work for you, it didn't do anything for you. So we have to get to the point of bhakti. Unless you break through all the egoism, selfishness, confusion, maya, unless you manage to break through and reach bhakti, then no, everything is just suffering. You haven't gone there yet. It hasn't worked yet. It's useless. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the word Pare, the Supreme, in this verse indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead rather than the impersonal Brahman, because Lord Krishna, the speaker of these instructions, makes reference in later verses to his personality as the Supreme. An impersonal interpretation in this case would be Eka Deshanvaya Uttara Shlokarta Tatparya Virodha, or a contradictory interpretation that creates illogical conflict with other shlokas, verses, spoken in the same context. It requires great endeavor to take care of a cow. One must either grow food grains to feed the cow or maintain suitable pastures. If the pasture is not properly maintained, poisonous weeds will grow or snakes will multiply, and there will be danger. Cows are infected by many types of diseases and bugs and must be regularly cleaned and disinfected. Similarly, fences must be maintained around the cow pasture, and there is even more work to be done. If the cow gives no milk, however, then one certainly performs hard labor with no tangible result. Of course, taking care of the nice cow is in itself the result of, we take care of pets, so that's all right as well. But the point here is like a profitable result in terms of like you get something for you out of the service, not just the love you put in. If the cow gives no milk, however, then one certainly performs hard labor with no tangible result. Laborious effort is also required to learn the Sanskrit language well enough to discern the subtle and esoteric meaning of the Vedic mantras. If after such great labor one does not understand the spiritual body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the source of all happiness in life, and if one does not surrender to the Lord as the supreme shelter of all things, then one has certainly labored hard with no tangible result other than his own labor. Even a liberated soul who has given up the bodily concept of life will fall down if he does not take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word nishnata, or expert, indicates that one must ultimately achieve the goal of life. Otherwise, one is not expert. As stated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prema Pumarto Mahan, the actual goal of human life is love of Godhead, and no one can be considered expert without achieving this goal. Very nice. Okay, verse 19. My dear Uddhava, that man is certainly most miserable who takes care of a cow that gives no milk, an unchaste wife, a body totally dependent on others, useless children, or wealth not utilized for the right purpose. Similarly, one who studies Vedic knowledge devoid of my glories is also most miserable. So it's a funny verse, isn't it? Because you get a little cultural glimpse at the time. The language Krishna uses to talk to Uddhava gives you like a little glimpse of the culture at those times. So again, the cow that gives no milk, an unchaste wife. I guess an unchaste husband is equally applicable here these days. A bodily totally dependent on others, which is like, it's a whole subject matter, isn't it? Like, what, like if your body is totally failing you, in a way, you kind of just want to get out of the body because you'll get another one anyway. So the right view is just get out of it. You don't want to be dependent on others. It wasn't well seen, this idea, of you just living there and, you depend on everybody else for everything. This wasn't considered very nice. It's not nice. Nobody wants that. And it's just kind of better, like if you can just get out of that body and get a new one, or just go back home, back to God. It's better. So tricky discussion. And useless children, which is basically all children today. But, you know, I love my kids, but they're useless. You know, let's face it, right? Because before kids would actually be useful, you know, they would like in a farm, they would actually do stuff. Or if you were a shopkeeper, they would actually work in the shop. If you were like a monarchy, you know, they would, you know, aristocracy, they would, you know, they would actually serve a role. They'd go to war, you know, they'd be serving in the court somehow, you know. But these days, kids are just, they're kind of useless, so what can we do? And this is interesting though, wealth not utilized for the right purpose. This is a big thing because, you know, wealth, people sometimes don't understand the spiritual burden of wealth. I mean, when you have wealth, you have a responsibility of dharma. You have to use that wealth well. I mean, this world is disgusting in the way it doesn't use its wealth well. I mean, right? Just in general terms, it's outrageously disgusting how wealth is misused in the world, right? I mean, you see all these mega rich people and, you know, they don't seem to care about the world, right? So, you know, these outrageous, you know, people are just so poor and suffering and diseases and inequality is just increasing more and more. You know, it's disgusting, like this wealthy being. So there's a real responsibility with wealth. You have to be, again, with everything in your life, you have to think in terms of dharma. Like, okay, what's my dharma? If I've been given this power, we know wealth is power. It's not like, oh, it's just for my, you know, oh, it's fun, it's for me, it's for my ego. No, it's like you've just been given this responsibility, you know, like now you have to do something with that. You have to use that well. You have to use that for the right purpose. You know, you really have to like help people out. I mean, if you've been given wealth, it's like, okay, Krishna's saying, look, I trust you with this energy of mine to help my children. You know, do something that's going to make the world a better place with it. And it's not just about, sure, it doesn't mean you can't get a nice car and a beautiful house, that's fine. But that's not the problem we have with the wealthy today. You know, who cares about what house or car they have? The problem is just the billions and billions they're just storing away in other financial assets. You know, it's like, what are you doing? You know, and the world you're just getting more and more, and like, you know, like Jeff Bezos, no, I won't pay you more, you have to work for less, you know, you can't take bathroom breaks or something, you know. And meanwhile, he's got like hundreds of billions of dollars. It's disgusting, you know. People are suffering, and it's just like, at the very least, take care of your people who work for you, who made you those billions. At the very least, make their lives good. You know, that's a simple dharma right there, and that doesn't take a genius, you know. But then further out, you know, what can you do? And can you help people? Can you cure diseases? Can you help, you know, humanitarian crises all over the world? Can you decrease the suffering? Can you give education and health? I mean, it's just like, come on, at least pay more taxes. I mean, you have some nice rich people saying, look, we have to pay more taxes. You know, there's some nice rich people who campaign like this, but it's like, it falls on deaf ears. It's like, at least pay more taxes, you know, because the government can distribute the money, something. But yeah, you know, wealth has to be utilized for the right purpose. Purport. A human being is actually learned or expert when he understands that all material objects perceived through the various senses are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that nothing exists without the support of the Supreme Lord. In this verse, through various examples, it is concluded that the power of speech is useless if not engaged for the Supreme Lord. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, this verse implies that all of the functions of the various senses are useless if they are not engaged in the glorification of God. Indeed, the Avaduta Brahmana, Dattatreya, the one we spoke, you know, we had his teachings at length in the beginning of this course, previously stated to King Yadu that if the tongue is not controlled, one's entire program of sense control is a failure. One cannot control the tongue unless he vibrates the glories of the Lord. The example of the milkless cow is significant. A gentleman never kills a cow, and therefore when a cow becomes sterile and no longer gives milk, one must engage in the laborious task of protecting her, since no one will purchase a useless cow. For some time, the greedy owner of a sterile cow may continue thinking, I have already invested so much money in taking care of this cow, and certainly in the near future, she will again become pregnant and give milk. But when this hope is proven futile, he becomes neglectful and indifferent to the health or the safety of the animal. Because of such sinful neglect, he must suffer in the next life, after having already suffered because of the sterile cow in the present life. Similarly, although a man may discover that his wife is neither chaste nor affectionate, or his husband, or her husband, he may be so eager to get children that he goes on taking care of such a useless wife, thinking, I will teach my wife the religious duties of a chaste woman. By hearing historical examples of great women, surely her heart will change and she will become a wonderful wife to me. Unfortunately, the unchaste wife in many cases does not change and also gives a man many useless children who are just as foolish and irreligious as she. Such children never give any happiness to the father, yet the father tediously labors to take care of them. More like the mother, right, has to laboriously take care of useless children by an absent, unchaste father these days. Anyway, also one who has accumulated wealth by the mercy of God must be vigilant to give in charity to the right person and for the right cause. If such a right person or cause appears and one hesitates and selfishly does not give in charity, one loses his reputation, and the next life he will be poverty-stricken. One who fails to give properly in charity and spends his life anxiously protecting his wealth, which ultimately brings him no fame or happiness. The previous examples are given to illustrate the uselessness of laboriously studying Vedic knowledge that does not glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that the spiritual vibrations of the Vedas is meant to bring one to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Many processes for achieving the supreme truth are recommended in the Upanishads and other Vedic literatures, but because of their innumerable and seemingly contradictory explanations, commentaries, and injunctions, one cannot achieve the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, merely by reading such literature. If, however, one understands Sri Krishna to be the ultimate cause of all causes, and reads the Upanishads and other Vedic literatures as glorification of the Supreme Lord, then one can actually become fixed at the Lord's lotus feet. For example, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, translated and commented upon Sri Upanishad in such a way that it brings the reader closer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Undoubtedly, the lotus feet of Lord Krishna are the only reliable boat by which to cross the turbulent ocean of material existence. Even Lord Brahma has stated in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that if one gives up the auspicious path of bhakti and takes to the fruitless labor of Vedic speculation, one is just like a fool who beats empty husks in hopes of getting rice. Srila Jiva Goswami recommends that one completely ignore dry Vedic speculation because it does not bring one to the point of devotional service to the absolute truth, Lord Sri Krishna. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something from it and that you have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.